morning. It's McCollum on Business. I'm Stephen McCollum, and for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to get you updated on what's happening here in the morning, right before the business starts happening out there in the world. Of course, the market opens at 7:30 Phoenix time, so we'll lead you up to that with some pre-market things. Of course, Tuesday is our morning show that we do here for McCollum on Business, 7 a.m. live here at Robat TV. Of course, on demand there at Robat TV and YouTube. Right after the show is done, as we roll into the main event here coming up at 8 o'clock as well. Bruce Cooper's coming in and joining us. He's finally well enough to come back in and got the bug going around there. So looking forward to that here coming up at 8. But for now, let's get into that Market Watch. You know, everything's futuristic. Of course, this is how the market closed yesterday. The NASDAQ bug is still affecting our trading system here. We're in the process of figuring out how to get that fixed. I can tell you the Dow futures are down 325 points here today as well. Big tech earnings week here is what we're looking at throughout this week. Of course, the Fed's meeting this week as well. The S&P futures are up 14 points right now. The NASDAQ futures up 138 as we look at that. And then Bitcoin, it's at 87,912 as Bitcoin pretty much trades 24 hours a day and 7 days a week out there. Stocks we're paying attention to pre-market. Well, we're going to look at medical insurance stocks. Our first one's going to be United Health. That's what we're going to look at here. So, folks, you can see it finished yesterday 1.30% down. Well, it's down another big amount in pre-market trading as well. It's down about 15% here in pre-market trading. Yes, as you can imagine. Not good news out there. Let's look at Humana real quick as well. There's another one. Humana is also down about 15% here in pre-market trading. Yes, down. Finished yesterday down 1.08%. And then CVS Health is the last stock we're going to look at right now. It finished yesterday actually 1.04% up, but you could see the big drop off on this as well. After the market closed, pre-market trading on this, well, they're down about 13%. CVS Health is here in pre-market trading. So these stocks are going to open the day down, obviously here. And why? Well, Medicaid Services released a proposal to raise 2027 Medicare Advantage payment rates by just 0.09%. That is a big disappointment to people who thought that the payment rates would be higher, to be honest with you. Far lower than expectations. Expectations was a 4 to 6% increase. And this released a proposal here of only 0.09%. That is why these stocks in pre-market trading are down 15% for two of them, 13% here for CVS Health. Something to watch here going into the market as it opens up here coming up at 7:30 today. But obviously that's the big news overnight in terms of the stock market. When we come back and look at stocks here in just a little bit, we're going to look at General Motors, Boeing, even American Airlines. Here are the stocks that we are going to pay attention to as we come back and look at the market watch here right about when the market's opening here, about 7:25 or so here this morning. And then let's get into the stories that have happened overnight as well, because the European Union and India, well, this is interesting. They have solved a decades-long problem between the two countries. Yes. Here's how it was phrased in a Fox Business report that I saw. The European Union and India concluded a free trade agreement after almost 2 decades of negotiations. Yeah. 2 decades of negotiations. They finished it here. Now, obviously, this is a lot to do with Trump's administration's tariff policies, kind of pushing them to this deal. Indian Prime Minister did come out and hail the agreement. It's a means of strengthening India's manufacturing and services sector, but also boosting investor confidence, of course, in the Indian economy, which is Asia's third largest economy. The EU, has always kind of fought with the Indian officials out there on trade policy. Well, the EU obviously is trying to pare back its economic reliance, and not just the United States, but China also. India is trying to shake its protectionist reputation, and they're also trying to offset that 50% Trump tariff because India has been stubborn here with the president on those tariff sides of things. So also, India wants to balance ties with Russia, and that's kind of the beef here with President Trump's administration is that Russia tie here by India. The deal is expected to double EU goods exports to India by 2032, and that's after India did agree to eliminate or even cut tariffs on 96.6% of shipments to the EU as well. So that's all according to a European Commission press release they put out overnight here, our time. The EU, well, it's going to eliminate or reduce tariffs on 99.5% of goods imported from India over 7 years as well. And that side came from India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry. They put that side of it out. So the two entities coming together and putting together a trade deal to move forward as well. And big story overnight. And then even then, yesterday, President Trump, he came out and said he was hiking tariffs on imports from South Korea. Yeah, they were at 15%. Now they're going to 25% here. Yeah, while doing so, he complained that the U.S. Allies legislature, meaning South Korea's legislature, wasn't, quote, living up to a trade deal that was reached last year. Of course, he put this out on Truth Social. And he said, quote, because the Korean legislature hasn't enacted our historic trade agreement, which is their prerogative, I'm hereby increasing South Korea's tariffs on autos, lumber, pharma, and all other reciprocal tariffs from 15% to 25%. He wrote that, of course, on the social media site. South Korea is an important trading partner here to the United States, and it ranks among the top sources of imports, top 10 actually, sources of imports to the United States. Companies, consumers, well, they import nearly $150 billion worth of goods from South Korea to the U.S., and that's just on a yearly basis. Now, if we go to South Korea's side of things, a spokesperson for the president of South Korea did say Tuesday that there had been no official notification from the U.S. government, nor any explanation of the details as of yet. The spokesperson did say a countermeasures meeting is scheduled to be convened as well here today. Trade Minister of South Korea, he's currently in Canada. He's also going to visit the U.S. as soon as possible, is what he said, to discuss the issue with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick as well to try to get around this new tariffs coming up 10% here on South Korea. All that's happening in the guise of, well, the central bank is meeting this week as well. We know the expectation. The markets have built it in as well. But we do know that the interest rate setting committee here of the Fed, well, it's almost certain, 99% certain, that's going to keep the key short-term rates unchanged. So it's going to keep it at about 3.6% here this week. Now, there's been 3 straight quarter-point cuts at the end of last year. But now, I was reading today that the expectation is, even when Jerome Powell's term is up here, coming up in March, that there's only an expectation of 2 rate cuts the remainder of this year, regardless of who sits in that Fed chair seat as well. Don't forget, back in December, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, he said after that December's meeting that they were well positioned to wait and see how the economy evolves before making any further moves. So that's kind of given us the hint. We've seen the reporting here with the CPI and the personal expenditures list, et cetera. And we know inflation is just staying at that sticky level there of 2.7, 2.8% as well. Now, we do know the Fed, when the Fed does lower the short-term rate, it can over time influence other borrowing costs, things like mortgages, even though that's tied more to the treasuries. But auto loans, business borrowing are all affected by that rate. But the inflation level and other things, right, are also are affecting these numbers here. These are those market forces that they have to take into account or at least look at as well. So this week's meeting, it's the first one of 2026, and it's one of 8 that the Fed's going to hold this year. It's obviously going to be overshadowed by the lawsuit, the filing of charges, or at least investigation of charges, that the Justice Department has subpoenaed the Fed here earlier this month as well. So it's kind of overshadowing everything. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is going to have to explain not cutting the rates here, or even if they did cut the rates, which they're not going to, and kind of justify it as he's not being influenced at all by that subpoena there as well, into him and the investigation. So he's got a tricky move here today coming up on his side. And if you're not paying attention as well, the Fed's meeting this week. Well, we're coming up to another deadline of a government shutdown this weekend as well. So I went to the prediction platforms out there, Kalshi and Polymarket. I don't understand them other than I could just see the results and how people are betting out there, right? Well, majority of traders are betting that the federal government will indeed shut down this weekend again. So according to Kalshi's market data, traders assign a 75% chance that the shutdown begins on Saturday. That's up 64 percentage points, by the way, over the last 2 days. So it's shot up over the last 2 days. Trading volume, which is basically the dollar amount wagered on the market, yeah, 8.6 million people have wagered in that market. So if we go to, Poly Marketplace, that the odds are at 79% for that, up 70 percentage points over a 2-day period. 8.5 million has been wagered on that bet. So two trading markets, both huge increases, 68 and 70% over the last 2 days of a government shutdown coming this weekend. Since 1976, the U.S. government has been shut down 21 times, most of them more recently than later, by the way. Senate Democrats are threatening to withhold Department of Homeland Security funding, of course, because of all the incidents that are happening over there in Minnesota. Last time it was the government money into the healthcare funds, and this time they're saying Homeland Security funds are going to be the reason why they're going to hold out at this point. And another government shutdown, I believe, also a government shutdown's coming our way up here on Saturday as well. So, folks, buckle up. Ain't going to get any easier out there. That is for sure. Now, interesting story here. It doesn't affect anything in the United States. Well, it does. We buy some of these products here. But a big conglomerate, a big company over in China is buying a big German company, and we buy the products here. You see them around if you're an athletics person and going to these athletic stores. Yeah, China's Anta Sports. Well, they said on Tuesday that they're going to buy a 29.06% stake in Puma. Yes, from the Pinault family who owns Puma for 1.5 billion euros, which is about 1.8 billion dollars. $1.8 billion is only a 29.06% stake, folks. Interesting enough, Anta Sports, they've ruled out buying Puma out altogether as well. So this is the biggest shareholder now, the Anta Sports is, the Chinese company, the biggest shareholder in Puma, obviously, moving forward. So Anta is a Hong Kong listed company. It's going to pay 35 euros per share in cash. That's a 62% premium to Puma's 21.63 euros closing share price on Monday. So they're paying not just big money, they're paying a big premium for it as well. Well, obviously, this stake deal is coming together because Puma seeks to revive its fortunes because it's lost a ton of ground in the world to Nike and Adidas. But now it's facing increased competition from the newer brands, right? New Balance, Hoka, hitting all these markets as well. Reuters was the first to report the deal earlier this month, but now we have the official words and everything on that. So not U.S. companies here, but obviously, if you're a sports person, you've seen obviously Puma out there for a lot of years, and kind of a big story change here for that company coming your way as well. So let's go to Google here. And you ever think that the devices are listening to you? We now have proof of it, folks. Well, at least in terms of a settlement, because Google has agreed to pay $68 million to settle a class action lawsuit that alleged that Google's voice assistant illegally recorded users and then shared their private conversations with advertisers. So it's a preliminary settlement. It has to be approved still, but it's filed January 23rd in federal court. Officially now, it's been filed. The settlement stems from a lawsuit because several Google device owners who claimed their conversations had been recorded without their knowledge. While Google stated that its voice assistant would only register people's speech when consumers uttered That activation phrase, you know that one. Hey, Google. I say that in my car all the time because that's how I have to trigger my GPS system in my car as well. So now these consumers claim that the devices recorded them even without using that specific term. Some claimants, well, they allege the Google devices recorded private conversations about financial issues, personal decisions, even employment. If the settlement is approved, Google will place $68 million into a fund that will pay all consumer claims, as well as court approved attorney's fees and all those other costs involved in that. So $68 million, and make no mistake about it, folks. Call me paranoid if you want to here early on this Tuesday morning. All your devices are listening to you, whether you know it or not. So be careful what you say about them, or around them, I should say, as well. And here in this segment, we'll leave with this. It's kind of an end of an era here in Utah this week as well. And, a traditional thing for young movie makers and, smaller firms, movie firms out there. Well, obviously, getting to that Sundance Festival stage, and then getting there just into the stage as well, with how packed Main Street is there in Park Central, and then getting up to the stage by winning awards. Well, it's a rite of passage for many American filmmakers as they try to work their way into that system and have a successful career. And it's officially the last time they're going to do it, at least in Park City, Utah, here is this year. Yes, Park City is hosting its final Sundance. It does kick off tomorrow, or Thursday, I should say. Yeah, not Wednesday, Thursday this week. Before the festival relocates next year to Boulder, Colorado, a city is about 12 times bigger, by the way, Boulder, Colorado is at that point. A once folksy independent film event, well, it was started by Robert Redford. He founded it in the 1980s. Well, it's outgrown Park City officially now because last year, more than 85,000 people attended the festival. That's all according to an economic impact commissioned by the Sundance Institute. Now, it's also the first Sundance since Robert Redford did die in September at the age of 89. Organizers are planning a mix of programming that honors him and takes in the sweep of his festival's history. Sundance grew out of Redford's belief in using his influence to open doors for others. He saw the event, and its nonprofit, the Sundance Institute, as an opportunity to change the world. His daughter was out here earlier this week. I saw her, I think it was the Today Show, but I saw her somewhere commenting on just the legacy of Robert Redford and creating that event and everything from that. So last Sundance Festival coming up here starting on Thursday, at least at Park City, that's the case coming up as well. Folks, when we come back here at this early morning business for breakfast, I guess we could say, use an old term for a show that's no longer around anymore, that I used to work at that radio station. But early morning, McCollum on Business here on Tuesday. We'll keep it rolling. Come on back. Local stories coming your way. McCollum on Business. And we're back here, McCollum on business. Of course, soon as we wrap up here on Tuesday morning, well, we're going to look forward to the main event, 8 to 10 a.m. here live at Robat TV. So if you're catching us here for early morning business, join us there for our sports programming here. Of course, what we do here in terms of our company producing shows here at Robat TV, me and 17-year NFL veteran Dale Hellestrae, and then Bruce Cooper's coming back this week. Missed last week, of course. Was under the weather, so he's coming back this week as well. We'll talk Suns, ASU, Arizona. Big game last night for them and BYU, so come join us. If you miss it all, don't forget, Robat TV on demand. It'll be there as well. The Real Matrix is on demand there as well. 14 episodes up for you here at Robat TV. Of course, all the podcasting systems at the main of or at TME Sports Show, where you can find the podcast if you need if you can't watch us live or prefer listening to it while you're driving. At TME Sports Show podcast, like and subscribe that. At the Pit Stop Talk for the sports for the NASCAR racing or racing side of the broadcasting. That has a podcast out there as well. Follow that on social media if you would, as well as TME Sports Show. Of course, the Real Matrix also has a podcast system at the Real Matrix out there. Everything, of course, that we produce here on our little production YouTube channel out there. Of course, the main event, the McCollum on Business, the Pit Stop, the Real Matrix, all shows we produce here, all available on the YouTube channel as well. Like and subscribe to them, even if you're catching here as well. And, folks, I'm just seeing this come across here. Market opens here in about 7 minutes, but Pinterest is laying off 15% of its workforce. It's going to push towards AI roles in teams. So that's breaking news here this morning as well. Obviously, everybody's paying attention to the Fed. We believe that they are not going to cut any rates here in this session. Well, let's get into that. See what the market's doing pre-market here with the Market Watch. The futures, S&P at least, futures are up. Everything's up except for the Dow futures. What you're seeing on your screen right now is just kind of pre-market trading. Doesn't tell you the whole side of things. It's actually what's happening here right before the market opens. Dow futures are actually down 353 points right now. S&P futures up 14. NASDAQ futures up 150. And then you see Bitcoin there. Russell 2K also up here in pre-market trading. Bitcoin, well, it's 88,193 here today moving forward. We'll take a look at this right before we go off air as well, and with the market open. If we catch it to where this will be updated. If not, I can at least give you what the market's open at here coming up as well. Stocks we're paying attention to right now. General Motors, obviously an automaker out there. Finished yesterday, 0.31% down. That's the number you see there. And then, folks, you see the big uphill swing there. That's pre-market, or basically after the markets closed yesterday. Turns to pre-market trading. It is up over 4% here in pre-market trading. It did report better than expected earnings for the fourth quarter. It issued a 2026 outlook that also exceeds analysts' forecasts out there. GM increased its quarterly dividend by 20%, folks. It even announced a $6 billion stock buyback program. Well, they're up 4% here in pre-market trading here on this Tuesday. Next up, we're going to look at Boeing. We know there's been good news for Boeing. We saw their numbers in there. Well, yesterday it finished down 1.48%. Well, here in pre-market trading, it's actually up about 2% here in pre-market trading. It reported its fourth quarter revenue. It was $23.95 billion, more than the $22.6 billion an analyst expected it to have out there. It's the CEO of Boeing. His name's Kelly Ortberg, if you don't remember. Fairly new on the job, almost a year now. He told staff that there's a lot to be optimistic about moving forward with Boeing. Of course, they've got their union stuff all settled, at least for the most part, and they're getting huge orders here, as we talked about earlier, or last week, I should say, here at McCollum on Business. And then let's look at American Airlines. We saw United had increased numbers and profitability coming up. Well, American Airlines yesterday finished 0.68% down. Well, here in pre-market trading, it's up over 3% here this morning in pre-market trading. They projected revenue growth for 2026. American Airlines expects to earn 7 to 10% more in revenue in the first 3 months of the year compared to last year's first 3 months. It also anticipates an improvement in adjusted earnings per share by the middle of the year. Of course, that's compared to last year. But interesting enough, all that optimism here in the beginning part of the year, yeah, the American Airlines fourth quarter results were short of expectations. So that's kind of why they were expected to be down yesterday, that 0.68, and that's why they're up here in pre-market trading about 3% with the optimism coming up here for 2026. Ignore the past. Let's look at the future, kind of a deal here for the market. Of course, pre-market trading is interesting. We'll have to pay attention to those stocks as they open here coming up and here locally in terms of a story and everything, right? You guys know we're down here, we get rain, we get 70-degree weather. It's gonna be 80 by Friday out there. But there's snow up in the mountains for the most part, less and less every year. But scientists and water managers, they're adding a new way to figure out exactly how much snow is held in those northern Arizona mountains. Well, the reason why, well, that's how much water that you can expect to, melt and obviously go into the groundwater and go into our river systems here to come down to the valley and the desert area as well. So this, they're employing a new way of figuring out how much snow's up there, because that'll tell them how much water they can expect to flow down here for the hotter summer months here. They're using planes, folks, is how they're doing it. These planes are rigged with high-tech sensors. They can measure snow to the centimeter, even when the sensors are thousands of feet, obviously, in the air as these planes are flying. The Salt River Project manages water and hydropower at a number of large reservoirs north and east of Phoenix Metro. If you didn't know, that's the Roosevelt Lake Canyon Apache system out there, Saguaro. Now, they're collaborating with Airborne Snow Observatories. It's a California based company, it's a private company. It operates the data gathering planes. And then, so they're joining with them and Arizona State University with this project. If you don't know how this works, water managers, well, they've been dependent on snow measurements for forecasting, but the data that they get often comes from sensors that are actually fixed to the ground. They can only go and only give and read measurements from a single point. Whereas these planes, well, they can help fill the gaps because they measure snow across roughly 540 miles in a single flight. And that passes the data over to SRP and ASU, and they get the data to them in about 72 hours. So a lot quicker as well than that single point reading. Information from the flight surveys can tell water managers how much of their annual portfolio will actually come from the snowmelt in that Salt River watershed area that they call it. It also tells them how much they're going to need to look for elsewhere, for like groundwater, Colorado River, to fill out the rest of the demand out there. So, new way of employing kind of the question marks and looking at how we figure out how much water in terms of our proposals we'll need coming up this summer as well. And we got a follow up here for you as well. Arizona Public Service. Isn't it amazing? They're doing a telephonic meeting here coming up. I believe it's Thursday night. Maybe it's tonight. I forget if it's Tuesday or Thursday. If you're in the APS area, but this is that 15% rate hike they're trying to put through on top of an 8% last year and on top of another big one the year before. Wasn't it amazing how they come out with new information today? Yes, this proposed Arizona Public Service rate hike for power, it includes a hefty increase for data centers. Yeah, APS just throws this out there this morning. It's the first we're hearing of it. So if you don't know, this is the proposal that calls for that 14 to 15% hike on residential customers. That would increase the typical household's bill by another $20 a month. We've been talking about this for several months now. Well, now they came out today and said that the data centers, they're going to get a 45% increase for their rates within this proposal as well. They want to make sure that they pay their fair share. I actually was listening to KTAR this morning on my way in, and they were talking about this, and they had the APS spokesperson on. She said, we want to make sure they're paying their fair share. Yeah, APS submitted this latest rate hike proposal to the Arizona Corporation Commission back in June. That was 16 months after the Arizona Corporation Commission approved that 8% increase. That alone added 10 to 12%, $12 per month to a typical residential bill. And they had a big increase the year before as well. It's going to be about $60 if this one goes through for this $20 increase. It's going to be about a $60 increase over the last 3 years to your electric bill. If it is approved by the Corporation Commission, the new rates would go into effect during the second half of 2026. But I do find it interesting that they all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we've heard nothing about a data center 45% increase. There's been obviously so much opposition to this 15% request that now all of a sudden data centers get 45. Yeah. Electric companies. Yeah. Dealing with a lot of stuff out there, folks. Hey, let's give you an update also on that old Fiesta Mall area out there. The owner of that site, of that Fiesta Mall site that's tearing it down and getting ready to start building up as well. Well, they came out, the owner did, and kicked off a campaign to bring a professional women's soccer team and Dome Stadium to that area. We know it was rezoned several years ago to be an authority where a stadium could be built, and we knew it was going to be a soccer stadium. It looks like they're trying to attract the NWSL into the Mesa area as well. Sunny Day Sports is what it's called. It's debuted its Founding Fans Grassroots Initiative. It aims to garner fans to support bringing women's soccer to the area known as the Palo District. Coming up here. Well, Vicky Mayo is her name. She's the chairwoman, co-founder, and principal owner of Sunny Day Sports. She's leading the group that did purchase that mall site there. It's 80 acres of land. It's going to house the stadium along with that $100 million women's health campus that they've already announced. Now details are thin. They're announcing stuff slowly out there. But Ms. Mayo was asked specifically about if there's hope of luring a NWSL team, an MLS team, or another professional women's soccer team here in the Valley, like the USL Super League. Well, Mayo said, quote, "The stadium was developed to be able to support the highest levels of professional soccer," unquote. Kind of vague, right? She also said, is not at liberty to share how far along the group was in stadium development plans, but she did say, quote, "We have a lot of the skill set in-house," unquote, when asked about project planning out there. So for the site, they're just kind of leaking stuff out there that they want to do, right? The women's health, we don't know a ton of details about that. Now, for the Dome Stadium, which we know they were zoned for now, now we find out it's for the women's sports side of things. At least they're not talking about it, but that's the assumption coming that route. And then it's officially over, right? The 2026 Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale auction is over here. If you missed it, if you blinked, you missed it. But it brought in more than $191 million during its 8-day run up there. In Scottsdale, it's just under the amount that was sold just a year ago. Officials with the auction event up there, it's at Westworld of Scottsdale, by the way, if you don't know where it's at. It's the 54th year here this year. And it does kick off the Valley's annual winter and spring tourist season with everybody coming into town to watch these cars be auctioned. 1,911 vehicles with no reserve bids crossed the selling block. And 6,500 bidders came through during this 8-day window as well. If you don't know, if you can't make it out there, it is broadcasted live there on the History Channel. I caught some of the action over the weekend up there. A 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing Coupe. It attracted the biggest bid this year. Is $2.53 million. Yeah, for a car. It was sold there on January 25th. The second highest bid went to a 1961 Mercedes-Benz 300 XL Roadster. That was purchased for $1.87 million as well. 9 vehicles, including a 2026 Chevrolet Corvette Stars and Steel Limited Edition ZR1X. That sold for $2.6 million. It generated an additional $5,000 from the Scottsdale Fire Department. That was all for charitable causes, and that raised about $5.85 million for those charitable causes. So the total raised for charity by Barrett-Jackson since the auctions debuted is all the way up to $170 million. Obviously, 54 years of history into that as well. So the auction, they do memorabilia there as well. 949 authentic pieces of auto memorabilia. Those changed hands for $4.7 million at the event. The 1920s Maple Leaf Gasoline Clear Vision model number 700 twin visible gas pump. A lot to say there. That gas pump raised $80,500 is what it was sold for a gas pump. So, you got the automobile auction, the automobilia auction going on in sales. Like I said, $195.7 million in sales here for this year. Last year, I told you it was slightly down. Last year was 198 million raised in 2025. And then 2024 was a record year. That got up to 207.6 million dollars in that 2024 year. A lot of course, celebrities get involved with this, put their cars up for sale, and that and it kind of drives it as well. So, um, another successful Bear Jackson up there in Scottsdale at Westworld. And folks, appreciate you joining us here for this Tuesday edition of McCollum on Business. Of course, we do mornings. We'll be back to 11 o'clock tomorrow, Wednesday. Come and join us live here at Robat TV, of course. If you have to miss us live because of work, first of all, let me talk to your boss. Second of all, catch us on demand on Robat TV, of course, on YouTube as well, folks. We'll see you tomorrow, 11 o'clock, McCollum on Business. Stay tuned. The main event coming up here. 8 o'clock as well. 17-year NFL veteran Del Hellestree, of course, always is on the show. And then Bruce Cooper, the local legend from Channel 12, joining us as well, folks. Come and join us there, and we'll talk a little sports. We'll see you then. Have a great Tuesday night.